This is Stephanie at High Tower Stitching with today's video, which is using 2.5-inch wide strips to make a neat block. This is for beginners and people that are starting back up. It's time to start a new year, and it's time for a new project. After a couple of big projects, I was ready for a small project. So I went back to one of my favorite books, and it uses 2.5-inch strips to make blocks. We did one last month, and then here's a different one. And if you look at this, it's really fun because it has 2.5-inch strips, and then it has a 4.5-inch block, which is set in with a partial seam, which is really easy and really makes this come together, and you'll see that as we go. But if you'll look up here where I'm pointing, this is 2.5 by 6.5, and there's another one, 2.5, 6.5. And then the third piece is on the side. It's 2.5 by 4.5. This is going to be the main component of the block. And if you'll watch and you'll go to the left, this is actually the way it's put together almost, is you're going to go over to the left, and there again you see the 4.5, the 6.5, 6.5 length, and then come down, and guess what? I bet you already know what I'm looking at. And that's that one. And then you're already back to the end. And we're going to have a partial seam, which just means a part of a seam, and it's going to fall right in here because we're only going to stitch from here to here. And you'll see why as we go to make this square. And this is the first one that I did. And this one I just took mixed up colors and put them together. And I think that's what I'm going to go back and do. But I was having so much fun, and it was the holidays. So then I said, oh, I'm going to try another version of this. And here you can see the same thing. Up at the top, you've got your 6.5, 6.5, and then a 4.5. And that's repeated once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. And it just has to do with the orientation of the shortest piece of where you put it. So that was kind of interesting, and that was just extra scraps I had. And I started with this flowered piece and then built it from there. So then I came to one that had a little more material, and I said I'll make a few more blocks of something else, and that's what I did here. And you can see the little variation on this one. I used a different center. I used the gray in the center, but you can see the blocks. I've got the green, and then I've got the 2 parts together that make a segment, a segment, a segment, and another one. So there are a lot of variety, a lot of things that you can do with this. But there again, I started with my flower piece as my accent and then added in. But I think what I'm going to do is go back and do the version of the front where it's going to be just a collage of colors when you get finished. After I had cut my 2.5-inch strips, the right lengths, I said, well, I'm not sure how I want to set this up, so I got a piece of cardboard. And I knew that I was going to have 4 of those small blocks put together. And so I just at random started putting the colors out. And this is the type of thing I would have done before I did that block and then the next one. And what we're going to do, once we get one of these sections put together, this is going to be where your first block is. This one's going to be the first one you do, and you're going to attach it partially to the square in the center. And then you're going to add on, go up, go counterclockwise, add the 2 on the top, add the next one on the side, and the next one on the bottom. And I know that's a lot, but I always like for you to know where we're going to go as we do this. So let's get ready. Now, just thinking about one block, and I always suggest that you try a block and see if you like it and learn a little bit about the material that you want to use. And so when you get ready to cut, everything is going to be, the first 2 parts are going to be 2.5 inches wide. So you can do your strip. And from a strip, you can cut 8, pieces that are that length, and then you're going to cut 4 pieces that are the 4.5 inch. That's that little piece that is on the end, and then you'll need a center, and you can use white, cream, or I had a light pink that I used. This is the first segment. This one's the one we repeat 4 times, and you can see it looks really good, and it's nice for opening the seams in the back because it lays flat. If you like to do yours to fold them to one side, you can do that. I've got my pile of 6.5 inches, so I've got 2 of my pieces of fabric. And if you're just starting out, there is nothing wrong with taking a ruler and some kind of and I wouldn't use a marker, I'd use like a mechanical pencil, and draw a line where 1/4 is, because the more you are right on your 1/4 for your whole project, the easier. And I'm just going to fold this back and fold this back to get ready to stitch this. When you get ready to cut your strips, be sure you check which way the stretchy way it goes. You want to cut these with the grain, and that's so it won't stretch. So check your fabric, and especially if you're using scraps that you've got left over. I've taken a nice sharp needle. I've threaded it with black thread because so it would show up a little better on the screen. And I'm going to start at the end, and on this one, you just can start at the very end and go down. I've got a little bit bigger needle than normal for me, and I'm going through the camera, but I'm going to go up and I'm going to go down, and I can do as many as I can load on my needle comfortably as I'm going to cross here. And at the very beginning on the row, you start slow because it's hard to hold on to it sometimes, and then pull it, smooth it out, turn it over, and see what's happening on the back. And those are big stitches, so you can see them, but you can see that I've got the material caught on both sides. Now, if they're really big stitches, that when you press it, you'll see holes in between. So then just take and start making your stitches a little bit smaller. This is a good one also to do on the sewing machine. So I would sew all the way across that piece. I'm going to get a little bit more so I can open it and we can look at the next part. And that would be great practice, and it's great fun putting those colors together. And I'm going to close off right here just by going back through it a couple of times to lock that stitch. Cut it off. And you can see I've gotten sort of some knots in there. Well, when I was really sewing it, I would try and get those knots out. But I also know that I'm just going to press those under the seams when I open them. So, but I wouldn't leave those there like that. Then you're going to be ready. And this is a nice project because you don't have to do any ironing till you get ready. And so what I did was I'd do a section, and then I'd finger press it open. If I could get it, I can get it open right now. Isn't that always funny? You can do it when you want to do it, and then when you're trying to show somebody, you can't get it to open. Okay, well, so I'm gonna there it goes. I'm gonna finger press that open, and that really works nicely. You just mash it open and all the way down, and that will hold you till you get ready to iron. So I'm going to turn it over. Now I'm going to go to the other patch of things that are 4.5 inch. And I'm going to take that one. I'm going to put the right sides together. And if you didn't put the right sides together on the first part, when you open it up, you're going to say, oh, I got to take that out. Then you're ready. And this sits on either end. And it's a longer run, so I would suggest that you pin it. And if you're still working on your 1/4 inch, trying to make sure you are close to 1/4 inch in your sewing, then you could draw your line again at 1/4 of an inch across there. And then take your threaded needle with a good knot in it, start at the end towards my right hand, and then sew all the way across, unless you're left-handed, and then you probably want to sew the other direction. Okay. Okay, now we want to start and talk about that partial seam. So take the 4.5-inch square that you have that's going to be in the center and fold it so that you have an idea about where a half is on one side. That's all you're worried about is one side. And I'm going to take it, and I'm going to take my other piece that I had, but this time now I've just got the two colored part at the top, and I have my other one on my left hand. And what I want to do is put those face to face. And go down here where you can see that where you had that little press place. And I'm going to pin that because that's going to be where I stop. That's going to be my partial seam stopping point. And I'm going to take and I'm going to go back and I'm going to start from that top that we were just looking at. I want to go in 1/4 of an inch. Hold some of the material bundled in your left hand. Last time I didn't have my thimble. I was surprised I did as well as I did because that makes my job easier. And so now I'm going to go, and you can see I'm really trying to make small stitches now. Thimble makes a big difference to me. For years I didn't use the thimble, and I couldn't get why people did. And then all of a sudden it just came to me. And I'm going to take and I'm going to stitch all the way across. Stuck in my pins. Pull it out nice and flat, and you can see that's going really well. I guess I should sit and practice doing this with a camera, but I don't ever have time. So, oh yeah, there it's going. I'll get all the way over here because I want to open it for you to see. You can probably already look ahead. It's amazing how many people, when I taught school, I was always surprised that we spent so much time with kids predicting. But Lord, sometimes I think, I look out there and I say, well, gosh, they could have predicted if they had done that something else was going to happen. And I'm going to take and I'm going to stop where that crease is. And I'm going to go through it twice. And there it goes. Got stuff. For some reason, this thread's knotting today, so ignore the knot. And let's cut this off. All right, and then facing you, there's your square, and open it up. Come along. And you can see that I've created a partial seam. And you say, well, that's not finished. And no, it's not, and there's a good reason for it. I'm going to show you on a sample. We're not going to get there today because we'd have to put all the other parts on there. So let's go back to one of our samples we've done. And I realized that showing would be a lot different on this one, but this is going to work. So go back down to the very beginning. This is what we were just working on. There was the top edge. There was the 4.5 inch. I had gone down and I had a crease right here, and I had stitched only this part, and then I stopped. All right, then this is where we talked about that counterclockwise. Then come up to the top and put your smaller one to the right and this part over, and sew it across there, and then come over to the third piece. This time the block goes up, the other two are attached to it, so stitch it on. And finally we come to the fourth piece. This one faces out to the left, and there were the other pieces that were added on it. And if you can visualize, we've come all the way around, and now we've got an opening from here all the way up to where I stopped that stitch. And what you would do is you're going to take and see if I can get this to go. Hold on one second. Okay, and this is that partial seam that we didn't do. Well, I went ahead and stitched from up where the stop was all the way down to the end, and then I pressed that seam open. And then that completed, it's almost like magic, then that completed your square. But the neat thing about it is you have this great square in the center, and with that partial seam that you had done down through there, that made it really easy to get it to turn out with that in the center. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. I want to share one more thing with you as I walk around here to it. Okay, let's say you were going to do a quilt with 20 blocks, which is just a nice size because these are 12-inch blocks. The chart would say then you're going to take 20 blocks where we needed 8 before, and now you need 160, so that's a good bit of cutting. And then you need 80 of the little short ones, and then the 20 center pieces. That's why I suggest that you try and do a pattern that you like. And I'm going to go back and use a lot of mix of fabrics. But here was one neat thing that it showed, that if you're going to do that multiple cutting, if you have a 2.5 inch by 36 inch strip of material, make sure you're going with the grain, then you can come down here and you can take that one strip and you can get 6.5 4 times, and this fabric's doubled, all right, but you get your, well, to get your 6.5 4 times, and then your 4.5 4.5, and said that with 40 strips you would be able to do your 20 blocks. So that's really neat, and that gives you some options to think about. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. This is a nifty 2.5 inch wide strip block with a partial seam. If you enjoyed this, thank you for watching. If you like this, please subscribe and hit like and leave comments. Thank you.